I reached for the ring I hadn't taken off in 42 years, only to hear it clink across the tile. She'd thrown it, right there in my kitchen. "Your husband's dead. Why are you still playing dress-up?" Her voice cut through me sharper than the silence that followed. I stared at the gold band, scratched but still whole, lying beside her designer purse. She thought grief made me weak. She didn't realize it made me patient. "Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe." The dining room smelled of rosemary chicken and fresh sourdough, the kind Martha had baked for Sunday dinners for decades. The long oak table, hers originally, was dressed with a crisp linen runner and mismatched candles. Sophia insisted were modern farmhouse chic. Martha sat at the far end, quiet but present, her fingers curled loosely around the stem of a wine glass she hadn't sipped from. Her wedding ring, delicate and dulled from years of wear, caught the candlelight as she twisted it absently, a nervous habit she'd never quite shaken. "So, I was going through some old boxes in the attic," she said gently, "and I found the handkerchief Robert carried in his breast pocket at our wedding. Still smelled like cedar somehow. Isn't that funny?" Frank cleared his throat but said nothing. Sophia didn't look up from slicing into her chicken. "That must be nostalgic." Ethan, seated between his parents, looked over at his grandmother and offered a half smile. "Wasn't Grandpa allergic to cedar?" Martha chuckled softly. "He always said it gave him hives, but he kept lining his drawers with it anyway. Stubborn man." "Sounds romantic," Sophia said flatly, wiping her knife on a napkin. "Clinging to mothballs and old rings. How poetic." The air tensed. Ethan looked down at his plate. Martha didn't respond. She glanced toward Frank, hoping, just hoping, for some kind of pushback. But he was staring into his mashed potatoes like they might rescue him. Sophia reached across the table suddenly. "May I?" Before Martha could react, Sophia took her hand, lifting it palm up to inspect the ring like it was a rusted bottle cap. "Still wearing this thing? It's been what, 8 years since he died?" She laughed, sharp and cold. "You don't need this crap. Let go already." Then, as if it were nothing, she slid the ring off Martha's finger and tossed it. It skidded across the table, bounced once off the wood, and landed with a soft chime on the floor. Nobody moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the dishwasher cycling in the kitchen. Martha stared at her bare hand, the indent where the ring had sat now glaring and pale, like skin that had forgotten what the sun was. Ethan stood halfway, then hesitated. His eyes darted between his parents and Martha. "Mom!" "Sit," Sophia snapped. Frank cleared his throat again, more forcefully this time. "Soph!" "Don't start," she cut in, voice honeyed now. "I'm just saying, it's time to live in the present." Martha rose slowly, her chair scraping against the hardwood like a scream muffled through walls. She walked around the table without a word, her body upright, her face unreadable. At her feet, the ring sat beside the leg of a sideboard. She picked it up gently, as if it were glass. Then she walked out of the room. She didn't slam the door. She didn't speak. But the silence left behind felt like thunder. In the hallway, her hand trembled as she slid the ring back on. It didn't fit quite the same. Her knuckles had thinned. Her skin was older now, but she forced it on anyway. Behind her, laughter started again. Forced, awkward. Someone mentioned dessert. Someone pretended nothing had happened. Martha climbed the stairs to her room and shut the door with a soft click. On her nightstand sat a photo of her and Robert in black and white, laughing in front of their first house. She touched the frame, then pulled open the drawer beside it. Inside was a key, small, bronze, and tarnished. She held it in her palm for a long moment. Then she opened the closet, pushed aside the rows of cardigans and blouses, and knelt. Hidden in the back, behind an old storage box marked Tax Records, 1994, was a lockbox. She hadn't opened it in years. Sliding the key in, she twisted. The latch clicked. Inside were documents, titles, account information, a list of assets, handwritten in her looping script. And something else, a letter from Robert, folded neatly and yellowing at the edges. She didn't read it, not yet. Instead, she reached for a fresh pad of paper and uncapped a pen. Tomorrow, she wrote at the top, "Call Olivia Reed." Martha sat at her kitchen table the next morning, the steam from her coffee curling upward like smoke from something freshly burned. Outside, the sun had just begun to rise over the neighbor's fence, casting golden stripes through the slatted blinds. But inside, the house was still. Too still. The kind of still that follows insult like the hush after glass breaks. She hadn't slept much. Her thoughts had moved in tight, angry circles, around the tossed ring, Frank's silence, the laugh Sophia had let out like it was just another punchline, but mostly they had circled around the fact that she had let it happen. Not anymore. Martha reached for her phone and found the number scribbled on a torn corner of an old envelope. Olivia Reed, Elder and Estate Law. She tapped it in. The voice on the other end was crisp, clear, and awake. Olivia Reed speaking. Martha hesitated for only a breath. "My name is Martha Ellis. I was referred by Helen James." "Oh, Helen's sharp as ever," Olivia said. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Ellis?" Martha glanced down at her hand. The ring was back where it belonged, but it felt different now. Heavier. "I need to talk about protecting what's mine." There was a pause. Then Olivia's tone shifted, slightly more focused. "I have time this afternoon, if you're free." By 1:30, Martha was sitting across from Olivia in a tidy office downtown. Dark leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and not a speck of dust. Olivia herself was no-nonsense and direct, her graying hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her handshake was firm. They talked. Martha didn't share everything, not yet, but enough. Olivia leaned back, her expression unreadable. "You'll want to remove your daughter-in-law from your will immediately, and we can set up a living trust that gives you control until death or incapacity. It's protected. No one can touch it without your explicit direction." Martha exhaled slowly, as if she'd been holding her breath since the night before. "And if I don't want them contesting it?" "They won't be able to," Olivia said. "But I'd recommend transferring assets sooner rather than later. Start pulling them out of shared reach." Driving home, Martha noticed things she hadn't before. The chipped edge of the stair railing, Sophia said, was character. The family portraits on the hallway wall, none of which included her. Even the flower vase on the entryway table, always filled with sterile grocery store roses, arranged just so. Nothing in the house was hers anymore. Not really. She stopped at the hall closet, pulled out a large Rubbermaid bin, and began to fill it, slowly, methodically. Framed photos, old recipes in her handwriting, the crochet throw her mother made in '59. She carried it all to the attic, where dust and quiet didn't judge. That evening, Frank texted, "I'm sorry about last night. Can we talk?" She read the message once, then turned the phone face down. Later, Helen dropped by, bringing over a fresh batch of lemon bars and her usual dry wit. "You look like a woman who's about to bulldoze a small village," she said, setting the pan on the counter. Martha smiled faintly. "I called Olivia." Helen's brows rose. "Good." They sat on the back porch, the late afternoon warm and buzzing with cicadas. Martha told her everything, Sophia's words, the ring, the silence at the table, the lockbox. Helen listened without interrupting. When Martha finally trailed off, Helen reached for her glass of iced tea and clinked it gently against Martha's. "About damn time." Night settled over the backyard like a soft wool blanket. As Helen left, she turned at the door. "You're not just protecting your things, you know. You're reclaiming them." Martha stood alone in the kitchen after, watching the darkness outside, one hand lightly touching her ring. Then her gaze shifted toward the cabinet drawer under the sink, the one where they kept the emergency flashlights, batteries, and spare keys. She opened it and pulled out the small black key fob with a fading dealership logo. The key to her husband's old safety deposit box. She hadn't touched it since the funeral. She grabbed her purse and set the fob inside. Tomorrow, she thought again, and this time, the words weren't quiet. They were steel. The key fit perfectly. The deposit box was tucked into a steel drawer along the back wall of the bank vault, just as Robert had described it years ago. The lock clicked open with a reluctant groan, and inside, beneath the papers and bonds, sat a navy blue folder labeled in Robert's tidy print, "In the event of my passing." Martha didn't flinch. She simply picked it up, placed it in her purse, and closed the drawer. That afternoon, Olivia's office was waiting again, papers stacked neatly, options laid out in crisp legal language. The living trust had already been drafted. Olivia flipped it around on the desk. "Once you sign, it's done. You maintain full control. No one else gets access, ever, unless you authorize it in writing." Martha's eyes flicked to the line marked "Primary Beneficiary." She'd filled it in by hand. Noelle Ellis. She wrote in a stipulation that Noelle would inherit only if she remained enrolled in school, stayed drug-free, and maintained regular visits. Emotional support, as much as financial. Martha's signature flowed steady and confident across the bottom line. "Power of attorney?" Olivia asked. Martha didn't hesitate. "Helen James." Olivia smiled faintly. "Smart woman." By the end of the week, every account Martha had, checking, savings, mutual funds, even her pension, was quietly rerouted. Passwords were changed. Names were removed. Documents refiled. Sophia's name vanished from every single record. At home, Martha worked in silence. She kept a donation bin near the dining room and filled it with everything she had ever offered to share. Family heirlooms, porcelain she'd promised to Sophia for when the time comes. Even the antique clock Sophia once claimed was a little too vintage, but fine, I guess. Gone. Each box was sealed and labeled. Donated. Not yours. Never was. Helen stopped by with a clipboard and a mock-serious tone. "I'm here for your official cutting off the ungrateful ceremony. I brought sparkling cider." Martha allowed herself the smallest smile. "Make yourself useful and check the asset schedule." They sat in the living room, the one Sophia had redecorated in bland neutrals, and reviewed each item. Helen took meticulous notes. The silence between them was soft, companionable. Outside, a cardinal landed on the fence. It didn't stay long. The next day, Martha overheard Sophia on the phone through the thin wall of the laundry room. Her voice was muffled but unmistakable. "She's just bitter, frank, clings to old rings and moldy traditions. The woman probably thinks a trust is a dessert." Martha folded a clean towel with slow precision. She didn't react, but later she unplugged the shared Amazon account, canceled the streaming subscription she had set up, and revoked the card Sophia used for grocery delivery. By midweek, the only thing Sophia could charge was her own phone. Frank texted again. "We should talk. I know you're upset. Let's figure this out like family." Martha didn't answer. She walked instead to the far end of the attic where a dusty cedar chest sat waiting. Robert's army jacket, her mother's wedding china, old report cards from Frank's grade school years, all carefully preserved. She sorted it with care, creating 3 piles: keep, give to Noelle, donate. There was no pile for Sophia. Later that night, Martha walked the empty upstairs hall. Family pictures still hung, but she noticed them differently now. Not with nostalgia, but calculation. Who was in the frame? Who had earned it? She reached the end of the hallway and stared at the last photo. Frank and Sophia on their wedding day. Martha was cropped at the edge, her face barely visible behind Sophia's veil. She took the frame off the wall, removed the photo, and slid it into a drawer marked shred. Then, from the same drawer, she pulled out a small, delicate envelope. It was addressed in her own handwriting to Noelle. She opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "You are my beginning and my end. Everything I do now, I do for you. Love, Grandma." She slid the letter into a slim manila envelope. then placed it into the fireproof safe under her bed. As she closed the safe, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Frank. Sophia wants to apologize. Can we come by tomorrow? Martha stared at the screen, then deleted the message without reading the rest. She turned out the light. The box was small, cedarwood, and smooth to the touch. Martha found it tucked away in the back of an antique shop 2 towns over, unpolished but honest, with a brass clasp that clicked shut like a whisper. The kind of box people pass down, not because it's worth anything, but because it held what was. She lined the inside with deep green velvet and began to fill it, not with money or jewelry or anything Sophia could sell, but with something rarer, memory, a pressed camellia from her wedding bouquet, a clipped photo of Frank at 5, missing his front teeth, a pewter thimble her mother gave her the day Martha moved into her first home, the original recipe card for Robert's favorite apple crisp, in her faded cursive, a hospital band from Noelle's birth, still looped, still pink. Each item was selected like it mattered, because it did. The last thing she added was a folded note, nothing long, just 6 words, written slowly with finality. For when you realize what you lost. She didn't sign it. That night, long after the house went quiet and the lights in Sophia's side of the home had gone dark, Martha slipped down the back staircase and walked silently to their front door. She set the box on the welcome mat, centered, visible, unmissable. Then walked away. She slept better that night than she had in weeks. By morning, Frank had texted again. Can we meet today? Sophia wants to apologize in person. Another ping. Ethan said you've been distant. Please don't shut us out. Martha didn't reply. She brewed her tea and opened the curtains, letting the morning light spill into the kitchen. Birds chirped at the feeder. The camellias in the side garden, Robert's favorite, had begun to bloom again. Mid-morning, she passed by the front hallway and paused, listening. Nothing. She opened the door. The box was gone. For a moment, she felt something. Curiosity, regret, but it passed quickly, like a breeze through a cracked window. Upstairs, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, the box open beside her. The pressed flower lay limp in her hand. She held it like it might crumble, which, of course, it would. She poked through the rest of the contents with a mixture of disdain and confusion. What am I supposed to do with this? She muttered, flipping over the recipe card. Handwritten dessert instructions? She didn't read the note. She balled it up and tossed it into the trash. From the hallway, Ethan watched, quiet, observant. Sophia, he said softly. You know Grandma didn't leave that for just anyone. Sophia looked up sharply. It's junk, Ethan. I don't know why she thinks this kind of melodrama matters. Ethan didn't reply. He just turned and walked away. Downstairs, Martha retrieved the trash after they'd left for errands. She saw the note, the crumpled paper flattened by a used tissue and a granola bar wrapper. She pulled it out, smoothed it on the kitchen counter, and pressed it flat again. Then she opened the lockbox beneath the floorboard in her room, separate from the fireproof safe. The secret one Robert had installed in '97, behind the loose board where she used to hide Christmas money. She slipped the note inside and shut it tight. Didn't think you'd get it, she whispered to no one, but I had to try. That afternoon, Olivia called. The last signature had cleared, every paper filed. The trust was now fully active and irreversible. Sophia could sue, Frank could beg, but the legacy had been sealed, legally, permanently, and without recourse. No one touches it unless you say so, Olivia said. Martha nodded into the phone. Thank you. After the call, she sat at the kitchen table and began organizing a second donation pile. Sophia had called her keepsakes clutter for years. Now, Martha would give that clutter to people who needed it. People who knew what it meant to be handed something earned. That evening, another text arrived. Ethan wants to come by to say hi. Just him. Just for a little. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her thumb hovered. Then she typed a single word. Yes. The doorbell rang just after noon. Martha didn't answer. She'd already seen Frank pacing on the porch through the front curtains, his tie askew, eyes puffy like he hadn't slept. She watched him shift from foot to foot, rehearsing what looked like another round of half apologies. He knocked once, twice. Then her phone buzzed. "Please, Mom, don't do this." "Let's just talk." She set the phone back on the counter, untouched. The envelope already waiting beside it had more weight than any message he could type. Inside it, a single page, neatly folded, her handwriting deliberate, composed. "This is my home. You have 30 days to vacate. There will be no negotiation. M.E." She tucked the letter into another envelope and stepped outside. Frank turned, relief flickering across his face, until he saw the envelope. She didn't say a word, just handed it to him. He looked down at it, confused, then met her eyes. "Wait, what is this?" "You'll read it," Martha said. Her voice was even. "Or Olivia can explain it to you." Sophia appeared in the doorway behind him, arms crossed. "Oh, wonderful." Another ultimatum in cursive. Frank opened the letter, scanning quickly. "You're serious?" Martha said nothing. Sophia laughed, humorless. "You can't be serious. You're evicting your own son?" Martha turned toward her. "I'm reclaiming what was never yours." Sophia stepped forward, fury bubbling beneath her polished exterior. "You've lost your mind. This house was a gift. You moved in with us. You don't get to pull rank now because you had a bad week and a box of dusty pictures." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Olivia filed the title change last month. The deed is in my name. It always should have been." Sophia's mouth opened, but no words came. Frank looked at the letter again, slower this time, his face paling. "I thought we were fixing this," he said, voice thin. "I thought—" Ethan came by. Martha's tone didn't soften. "Ethan came by. You didn't." She stepped back inside and closed the door before either of them could say another word. That afternoon, Olivia called to confirm what Martha already knew. "All recorded," Olivia said. "County recognized the transfer, and the 30-day notice is legally binding. If they push back, we go to court, but they won't win." Martha let the words settle in her chest. "Good. Do you want me to send a copy to Sophia as well?" "She'll get it," Martha said, and hung up. Helen arrived 2 hours later, armed with cardboard boxes and 3 types of colored tape. "We're labeling everything today," she announced, marching through the living room. "Green for keep, blue for donate, red for Sophia touch this, and it needs to be saged." Martha laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. They moved room by room, working efficiently. Helen cataloged keepsakes. Martha packed her journals, Robert's books, Noelle's baby drawings, and the silver pendant her own mother once wore every Sunday to church. In the guest room, the one Sophia had turned into her personal office, Martha found a framed vision board leaning against the wall. It was covered in glossy cutouts, a beach house, designer handbags, the words "Manifest Abundance" scrawled across the center in gold marker. She stared at it for a long moment before flipping it face down and sliding it under the bed. Helen walked in with a box labeled "Kitchen, Martha." She paused. "Everything all right?" "I'm fine," Martha said. "Just boxing up someone else's dreams." By dusk, the house had changed. It felt lighter, rooms cleared, corners reclaimed. Every drawer Martha touched felt like a small act of erasure and rebirth. As Helen packed up to leave, she turned to Martha. "You really doing this?" Martha nodded. "They'll be gone in 30 days. I'll have peace." Helen studied her. "And when the day comes, what then?" Martha looked toward the window, where twilight was just starting to stretch across the lawn. "I think I'll sleep in the master bedroom again." Helen smiled. "Damn right you will." That night, as Martha placed one final box into storage, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Frank. It was Sophia. "You really think you can cut us out and live in that house alone? You'll regret this. Mark my words." Martha stared at the message, unreadable. She didn't delete it. She screenshotted it, then forwarded it to Olivia. The courtroom smelled faintly of lemon-scented polish and nerves. Martha sat beside Olivia at the plaintiff's table, her posture straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore a navy blazer Robert had once said made her look like she ran the PTA and the FBI, the kind of confidence she hadn't needed to wear in years. Across the aisle, Sophia sat coiled like a rattlesnake, hair too perfectly in place for the time of mourning, lips drawn in a smile too sharp to be real. Frank was beside her, but a half step back, as if even his own presence felt apologetic. The clerk called the case number. The judge, a gray-haired woman with reading glasses and the tired patience of someone who'd heard it all, looked down at the file. Mrs. Ellis, you're requesting permanent legal transfer and control of property and estate matters, correct? Olivia stood. Yes, Your Honor. As per the trust filed, all documents are in order and compliant with Illinois estate law. Sophia raised her hand dramatically. Your Honor, if I may. The judge didn't look up. You'll have your turn, Mrs. Ellis. Martha's expression didn't shift. She could feel Olivia's calm presence beside her, unshaken, composed. Sophia finally got her chance. She rose, her voice already dialed up to courtroom volume. This is a clear case of elder instability, she began, gesturing toward Martha like she was testifying about a stranger. My mother-in-law has become erratic. She's been manipulated by her so-called friend, Helen James, who, by the way, was disbarred years ago, and she's cutting out her own family based on paranoia and senility. Olivia stood with surgical timing. Objection. We have medical records affirming Mrs. Ellis's mental competence, including a psychological evaluation conducted last month by a state-licensed provider. I have the report here. She handed the documents to the bailiff, who brought them to the bench. The judge skimmed the top page. Noted. Sophia kept going, louder now. She's trying to steal back the home we took her into. We gave her shelter, meals, everything. And she's rewarding us by throwing us out and cutting us off like garbage. Martha didn't flinch. Olivia rose again. We also have documentation of verbal abuse, belittlement, financial misuse of Mrs. Ellis's contributions to the household, and evidence of coercion involving shared assets. Screenshots of text messages, audio from within the home, submitted as Exhibit D. Sophia's mouth opened, then closed. Frank looked down. Mr. Ellis, the judge said sharply, do you contest your mother's capacity or her right to reclaim her own property? Frank hesitated. I think this has all just gotten out of hand. The judge raised an eyebrow. That's not an answer. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know what I think. The silence that followed was heavier than any outburst Sophia could have delivered. Martha finally stood, not dramatic, not defensive, just deliberate. When I moved into that house, I brought more than boxes. I brought the last pieces of a life I built with my husband. I was invited, yes, but that home was bought with money from my retirement, furnished with my belongings, and treated like a storage locker for my past. She turned slightly to face Sophia. You didn't want a mother-in-law. You wanted a maid with a pension. Sophia huffed, eyes rolling. Martha turned back to the judge. I'm not asking to take anything. I'm asking to reclaim what was mine before they started treating me like a ghost. The judge nodded slowly. I've reviewed the documentation. The trust is valid. The title transfer's compliant. There's no legal standing to challenge the estate. She banged the gavel once, clean and final. Control of the property remains with Mrs. Martha Ellis. Case dismissed. Olivia exhaled. Martha sat down slowly, her hands still steady. Across the aisle, Sophia stood abruptly, eyes blazing. This isn't over, she snapped, grabbing her purse. You can enjoy your empty little castle, Martha, but don't expect a phone call when the next family funeral rolls around. Martha rose, met her stare without blinking. I'll manage the silence just fine. Sophia stormed out. Frank lingered behind. He looked at his mother for a long moment, but she didn't offer him anything. No hug, no comfort, no absolution. only the quiet judgment of a woman finally tired of being gentle. He followed his wife out without saying a word. Outside the courthouse, Martha stood on the steps, face tilted toward the sunlight. "Justice feels cleaner than I expected," she murmured. Olivia smiled faintly. "And more permanent than revenge, most days." Martha didn't answer. She just looked out over the quiet street, wondering not if Sophia would strike back, but how soon. The notary slid the final page across the desk with a practiced hand. Initial here and here, then sign at the bottom. Martha's pen moved without hesitation. The room smelled of ink and dry paper, sterile, legal, final. Her signature, bold and looping, sat on the final line like a stamp of closure. She looked up at Olivia, who sat across from her in a dark green blazer, sharp as ever. "That's it?" Olivia nodded. "That's it. Your will, trust, power of attorney, medical directives. Everything is finalized, notarized, and legally reinforced under both federal and state estate law." Martha leaned back slightly. She should have felt relief. Instead, what she felt was calm, a kind of peace that didn't beg to be celebrated, just kept, like a secret. "I want a second set of everything in the safety deposit box," she said. "No backups in the house. Too vulnerable." "Already arranged," Olivia replied. "Helen has a key. I'll have the bank verify access logs weekly, just in case." Martha nodded. "Good." Outside, the clouds were thin and high, the kind that meant winter was creeping in, but hadn't yet taken hold. Martha walked to the bank alone that afternoon, her tote bag holding the sealed folder Olivia had handed her with every finalized document. It felt heavier than it looked. Inside the vault room, she opened Robert's box, the same one that once held insurance bonds and military service medals, and gently placed the manila folder inside. She stared at it for a long moment before closing the lid and locking it again. Let them try, she thought. Frank texted that evening. "Mom, I know I've made mistakes. I just want to talk. I miss you." She read it, didn't reply. 2 days later, another message arrived. "Sophia said she was wrong. We're trying to fix things. Please just let us explain." She didn't even open that one. Just swiped left and hit archive. The old Martha, the Martha who taught second graders how to spell forgiveness and empathy, would have agonized over those words. This Martha, she'd seen what silence could preserve. On a Thursday morning, while watering the orchids by her bedroom window, Martha opened Facebook for the first time in weeks. She wasn't sure why, maybe curiosity, maybe something sharper. There it was. Sophia Ellis. Some people never outgrow their toxicity. Family should mean love, not control. Boundaries matter, even if they're blood. Toxic parents set off boundaries. Healing. Martha stared at it for a moment, her thumb hovering. The comments were dry, a few generic likes. One emoji reaction. Nobody replied. No support, no outrage, no defense. It landed like a stone in a dry well. Martha closed the app, placed the phone down beside her tea, and turned back to pruning dead leaves. Starved things can't bloom, she murmured to herself. She spent her days now in quiet rhythm. Mornings in the garden, afternoons reviewing donations for the community center. Tea on the porch with Helen every other Friday. Noelle came by on weekends, always smiling, always asking questions about the trust. Curious, not greedy. "You wrote in the will that I have to visit monthly or forfeit a portion," Noelle said once, mock pouting. "You'll thank me for it later," Martha replied, hiding her smile behind a teacup. Helen laughed. "She's not bluffing, kiddo," Noelle grinned. "I don't care about the money," Martha believed her. Later that week, Olivia called again. Routine follow-up. "I just wanted to confirm everything's on record. Your trust is bulletproof, your estate airtight. Not even a skilled litigator could poke holes in this if they tried." Martha was stirring a pot of lentil soup. She didn't stop. "Let them try," she said again softly. "You've done the right thing," Olivia added. "This isn't revenge, it's protection." "No," Martha said. "It's both." That night, she pulled a shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside was a small stack of letters, old ones yellowed at the edges, one from Robert, two from her sister, long past, and three she had never opened. They were from Sophia, from before the marriage. Apologies, gratitudes, the performance of affection. Martha read them for the first time. They were hollow, filled with polished sentences and just enough warmth to pass. She dropped them, one by one, into the fireplace, watched them curl and blacken. When the flames died down, she placed one new item into the shoebox, a printed copy of her updated will. On the front, she'd written in thick black marker, "In case they come digging." Martha sat at her desk with the sunlight hitting just right, warm across her shoulders, cool at her feet from the vent. She had just finished sorting a stack of bills, all of them with her name and her name only. The phone buzzed. Olivia Reed. Martha answered on the first ring. "It's done," Olivia said. "Every clause has been reviewed. The trust is sealed. No one, no spouse, no child, no ex-daughter-in-law can reverse or access a dime. Irrevocable, just the way you asked." Martha let out a long, steady breath. "Good," she said. "And Noelle? She's protected. Her tuition is prepaid for the next 4 years. There's a separate fund for housing, books, and whatever else she needs. I've even arranged a monthly disbursement into an account she can access directly, independent of her parents." Martha felt her eyes sting, but blinked it back. "Thank you, Olivia." "This isn't just legal," Olivia said. "This is legacy, and it's ironclad." 2 days later, the phone rang again. Frank. Martha didn't answer, but this time he left a voicemail. She listened with the volume low, her thumb hovering over the delete button. "Hi, Mom. It's me. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but things are getting tight. Work's been slow, and look, I'm not asking for anything big. Just some help. Just until we catch our breath." She listened until the end, then let the silence that followed linger before deleting it. She wasn't surprised. Frank had always coasted. Sophia had always climbed. Together, they'd built a life based on borrowed time and other people's credit. Now the clock was ticking. Sophia's spiral began quietly. The Amazon deliveries stopped. The designer handbags disappeared from the hall hooks. One morning, Martha spotted her unloading groceries from a beat-up sedan. Definitely not the Range Rover she'd been so proud of. Later that week, a call came through from an unknown number. Sophia's voice was unmistakable. Sweet, syrupy. "Martha, hi, I wanted to check in. I think there's been some miscommunication and, well, we're all family, aren't we?" Martha didn't respond. She hung up before the second sentence finished. Noelle arrived that Sunday carrying a tote bag full of books and a bright energy that made the house feel bigger. "I brought you lemon scones," she said, setting the bakery bag on the counter. "And I figured I'd stay for a bit. Midterms are killing me." Martha handed her a glass of iced tea. "You always have a place here. You know that." They sat on the porch as the breeze carried the smell of camellias and pine. Noelle looked at her grandmother, studying the fine lines around her eyes, the way her hands rested with quiet certainty on the armrest. "I know you've been through a lot," she said finally. "But I'm proud of you, really, for standing up for yourself, for standing up for me." Martha didn't answer right away. She watched a bird land on the railing, then take off again without a sound. "You deserve more than chaos," Martha said at last. "More than manipulation dressed up as family." Noelle sipped her tea, nodding slowly. "They don't know what they lost. They'll feel it," Martha said. "Eventually." She reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Noelle's ear. "But you, sweetheart, you'll never have to wonder what I left behind. It's yours, and no one can take it from you." That evening, another text arrived. Martha recognized the area code, Frank's, but this one came from a different number. "I know you're angry, but things are falling apart over here. I just thought you'd want to help, for Ethan's sake. if not ours. Martha stared at the message. Ethan. She hadn't thought of him as collateral, but he was. Quiet, kind, and stuck between loyalty and survival. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either. Instead, she forwarded it to Olivia with one sentence attached. If they try to use Ethan, I want protections in place. Olivia replied within minutes. Already ahead of you. Martha leaned back in her chair, the house silent around her. No knock at the door, no footsteps above, no voices behind walls, just her. And the sound of the lock she'd changed last month clicking shut with a satisfying snick. The call came just after sundown. Martha had just finished washing the dinner dishes when her phone vibrated on the counter. She glanced at the screen. Frank. She let it ring once, twice. Then, on the third, she pressed accept, lifted the phone to her ear, but said nothing. On the other end, Frank exhaled a shaky breath. Mom, I know I don't deserve to be calling. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for not standing up for you, for letting things get this far. Silence. I should have been better. I should have protected you. I let Sophia. He stopped himself. We made mistakes, but things are falling apart now. We need help. Still, Martha said nothing. I'm sorry, Mom, he said again, voice breaking. Please, help us. A long pause. Then Martha ended the call. She didn't slam the phone down. She didn't cry. She simply walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and composed a new email. To frank.ellis@mail.com. Subject: Final response. Frank, I've already given. I gave you my savings, my furniture, my patience. I gave you time. I gave you silence. I gave you every second chance you didn't earn. It's time you learn to give back, on your own. Your mother, Martha Ellis. She hit send. Then she closed the laptop with a satisfying snap and returned to her tea. The next morning, Sophia knocked on the door. Not rang, knocked. Like someone who knew they weren't welcome. Martha opened it halfway. No more. Sophia's smile was strained, her makeup perfect, but her eyes couldn't lie. There were sleepless nights in them, and fear. Martha, she said almost sweetly, I wanted to apologize for what I said, for what I did. You didn't deserve any of it. Martha waited. Sophia continued, voice just barely wobbling. I know things have been difficult, but Frank's trying. I'm trying. And Ethan, he misses you. We all do. There it was again. Ethan, held out like a peace offering. Martha's voice was even. Tell Ethan he's always welcome here. But this door is not open to you. Sophia blinked. You're not even going to consider. Martha didn't wait. She shut the door and turned the lock. This time, she heard Sophia's footsteps pause before walking away. Maybe waiting for her to change her mind. She didn't. That afternoon, she met Olivia at the bank. They sat in the private client office. Papers spread out between them. Everything was in order. But there was one more step. Martha pointed to the line near the bottom of the document. I want this new trust for Noelle. Her college fund, living stipend, everything, moved into its own umbrella, completely isolated. If Sophia so much as sneezes in the direction of a challenge, I want her blocked. Olivia's eyes flicked to Martha's, impressed. You're learning to think like a lawyer. No, Martha said, signing the last page. I'm thinking like a woman who's done being used. 2 days later, Olivia emailed a scanned letter from the trust attorney. Contestability of will and trust. Rachel Ellis, a.k.a. Sophia. Dear Mrs. Ellis. As of the most recent filing, Rachel Ellis is legally barred from contesting any element of your trust or will. Any attempts to do so would be denied under Section 6, Clause 11 of the Protective Estate Provisions. All safeguards are active and compliant with state and federal law. Olivia had added a short note. Nothing left for her to touch, not even legally. Martha printed the letter and filed it in a folder labeled Final Protections. Then, for the first time in months, she opened her piano. It hadn't been touched in years, left mostly as decoration under the picture window. She dusted the keys with a soft cloth, sat down, and began to play. The notes were rusty, stiff at first, but they warmed under her fingers. A quiet melody drifted through the house, not a lullaby, not a lament, but something resolute. That evening, another envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single page of notebook paper, torn at the edge. I didn't know she'd go this far. I just wanted peace. I still do. Martha read it twice. Then she folded it gently, slid it into the envelope, and placed it inside the small cedar box in her closet, next to the crumpled note Sophia had thrown away months ago. Not forgiveness, but a record. Noelle arrived just after lunch, her shoulders hunched under the weight of something heavier than her backpack. Martha opened the door before she knocked, as if she'd felt it in the air. They sat in the sunroom, light pouring through the tall windows, but Noelle couldn't settle. Her fingers twisted the strap of her bag, her voice thin. She said she's sorry, she whispered finally. My mom, she told me last night, said she didn't mean any of it. Martha stirred her tea gently. Did she say that to you, or about me? Noelle looked up, eyes rimmed with the kind of tears that weren't meant for begging, but for breaking. She said, you've made her feel invisible, that you've punished her enough. Martha set the spoon down. The soft clink of metal against porcelain echoed. She is invisible, Martha said calmly. To me. Noelle didn't cry, not fully, just let her breath catch once and nodded. I want to believe her, she said quietly, but I don't. Martha reached across the table, laid her hand gently over Noelle's. You're allowed to love her. You're allowed to hope. But you're not required to believe a liar just because she's your mother. Noelle looked at her. Does that mean you'll forgive her someday? Martha's gaze didn't waver. Noelle, you're my legacy, not them. You're what I'll leave behind, not the mess they made of me. Something in Noelle unclenched then. Not joy, not relief, but a deep, trembling release. She leaned in and hugged Martha tight. Thank you. 3 days later, the email came. From Sophia. The subject line was blank. The body read like a script written in desperation. I've tried to make things right. I've apologized. I've stayed away. I don't know what more you want. But taking everything from us, our stability, our dignity, that's not justice. That's cruelty. Let's be civil. Give us back what's fair. We can reset. Martha didn't reply. She simply highlighted the message and dragged it into the folder marked Documentation, Manipulation Attempts. Later that day, a voicemail from Frank landed like a pebble in the silence. Mom, I know I let you down. I let everyone down, but I'm different now. I swear I am. I've been reading books on boundaries, on generational trauma. I want to do better. Just let me prove it. Martha played it twice, not because she was tempted, but because she wanted to hear how carefully he'd rehearsed it. She texted back 2 sentences. Some promises can't be kept. Some shouldn't be offered. She blocked the number. That Friday, Helen arrived with a basket of Honeycrisp apples and a bottle of bourbon she claimed was medicinal. I heard through the grapevine that Sophia tried to stage a remorse parade again, Helen said, settling on the porch swing beside her. Martha poured 2 glasses and handed one over. She's exhausting, even in silence. Some people apologize because they mean it, Helen said. Others apologize because their audience changed. Martha raised her glass. And some people think they're owed applause for cleaning up a mess they made with a flamethrower. They clinked. The wind shifted, cooler now, leaves starting to yellow. From the garden path, Ethan appeared, hesitant but alone. He didn't come to the door, he didn't wave. He simply stood there, clutching something in his hands. A notebook. A letter, maybe. Martha stood, walked to the edge of the porch. Ethan looked up, his voice steady despite the tremble in his jaw. I'm not here for them. I just wanted to see you. Martha's eyes didn't soften, but they didn't harden either. She said nothing. She stepped aside and let him pass. The envelope was thick, heavier than it needed to be, cream-colored, embossed with the firm's logo. A lawyer's letterhead. Martha opened it with the tip of a letter opener she hadn't used in years. Inside, a settlement offer. Rachel Ellis, Sophia's legal name on all court documents, was requesting a mediated agreement for partial access to what she described as unjustly withheld marital property. The wording was slick, polished, a subtle threat wrapped in professional civility. Martha didn't flinch. She slid the letter across the table to Olivia, who reviewed it with a faint smirk. "They must be getting desperate," Olivia said. "They're hoping the word settlement will sound like mercy instead of surrender." Martha sipped her coffee. "Write them back. Anything specific you'd like me to say?" Martha reached for a pad of her personal stationery, ivory, monogrammed, and uncapped a pen. Her handwriting, still neat, still elegant, moved without hesitation. "Rachel, you burned your bridge when you slapped me. In front of my son, in my house, over a ring that was never yours. You may now sit in the ashes. Martha Ellis." She slid the note into a matching envelope and sealed it with a firm press. "Let her chew on that," Olivia chuckled. "Short, devastating. I'll attach it to the formal rejection." The calls came again over the next week. Frank, Sophia, blocked. Voicemail, repeat. Even Ethan didn't bring their names anymore when he visited. He came quietly, respectfully, offering help in the garden or sitting in silence on the porch with a book. Martha never asked what he knew. He never asked for forgiveness. They existed in a new kind of peace, an unspoken truce made not of words, but of consistency. Then, one bright Tuesday morning, the letter came. University of Michigan. Blue and gold seal in the corner. Noelle stood on the porch, envelope in hand. Breath held like a glass about to spill. Martha opened the door before she knocked. They read the letter together in the kitchen, side by side. "We are pleased to inform you," Noelle gasped, covering her mouth. Martha didn't speak. She only smiled and pulled her close. Fully covered, Martha said softly, "Tuition, housing, meals, everything. You can go knowing you don't owe anyone anything." Noelle stared at her. "You did this." "I just made sure no one could take it from you." Tears spilled. Uninvited and unashamed. "I don't deserve you," Noelle whispered. "You don't have to," Martha said. "You just have to become the kind of woman who pays it forward." By Thursday, the rumors had begun to trickle in. Sophia had filed for bankruptcy. A shared friend of Helen's confirmed the court documents. A mountain of debt. A car repossessed. A frozen credit card. Frank's name dragged into it like old garbage tied to the back of a broken-down truck. Martha didn't smile. Not exactly, but something inside her finally loosened. Later that evening, Noelle sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, the acceptance email glowing on the screen. "Will it always be protected?" she asked quietly. "Even if they try again?" Martha placed a hand gently over hers. "They can file 100 petitions. I've locked every door." Noelle nodded, biting her lip. "It just feels like they always find a way to twist things." Martha's voice was steady. "Not this time. The trust isn't just money. It's boundary. It's shield. It's everything I should have drawn years ago." Noelle's shoulders eased. "Okay." Martha rose, walked to the fireplace, and opened a drawer tucked behind the kindling stack. She pulled out the last of her blank stationery and began to write. Not a letter to send, but one to store. "Dear Rachel, you taught me many things. How cruelty hides in charm. How silence can be weaponized. How betrayal doesn't need blood to count. But I taught myself something better. How to bury what tries to bleed me. Consider this the obituary of our relationship. M.E." She folded it, slid it into the small cedar box, locked it. She'd written many letters since this all began. But that one was never meant to be received. The for sale sign went up on a Thursday morning. Martha saw it from her bedroom window, coffee cup in hand. The sign staked into the lawn like a flag in retreat. Red letters, tilted slightly to the left. A gust of wind bent it forward like it was already giving up. They hadn't told her, of course, but they didn't need to. Frank and Sophia's house, just one street over, just far enough for plausible avoidance, had been stripped of its pretense. The flower beds were bare, the shutters faded. The last of the luxury cars replaced by a used compact that wheezed every time it backed out of the driveway. 2 weeks later, the moving truck came. No hugs, no fanfare, no neighbors helping out. Just Frank and Sophia, sweaty and short-tempered, boxing up a life that had once been polished enough to impress a dinner guest, and brittle enough to shatter under scrutiny. Martha watched from her upstairs window, not spying, just noticing. Sophia paused once, just once, and looked toward Martha's house. Martha didn't flinch. She didn't move the curtain. She just stood still, perfectly visible, and sipped her coffee. That was the last time Sophia looked. The following week, a thick envelope arrived addressed to Noelle. Yale, deep blue crest, heavy paper. She opened it on the porch, Martha sitting beside her, the camellias blooming behind them. Noelle's hands trembled as she read aloud. Full ride, Ivy League, graduate program, law. Martha didn't speak. She simply reached over, took Noelle's hand in hers, and nodded once. Later that night, Noelle turned to her with glassy eyes. You gave me a life that doesn't need permission, Martha smiled. I gave you a life that can't be taken. There's a difference. Meanwhile, the storm worsened elsewhere. Helen had forwarded Martha a copy of a public filing. Chapter 13, Bankruptcy, Frank and Rachel Ellis. It was all there in black and white. Maxed out credit cards, unpaid property tax, civil liens from former business associates, a second mortgage no one remembered taking out. No assets, no backup. Only names now, trapped inside a paper trail of failure. Martha didn't celebrate. There was no joy in watching a child fall. But there was relief in no longer being the net they expected to land on. She had been used, dismissed, manipulated. Now she was simply gone. Olivia called that afternoon with one final task. The last filing is complete, she said. We've recorded the trust under federal estate protections. The IRS can't touch it. Their names are nowhere on the document and never will be. Thank you, Martha said. There's one more detail, Olivia added, her voice a touch hesitant. You listed Rachel Ellis in some of your older digital family archive settings. Your public genealogy records, your online family tree, the ones you forgot existed. Do you want me to request removal? Martha opened her computer. She'd forgotten about the tree, a site she'd joined years ago, back when she thought documenting the family lineage might somehow hold it together. She typed in her login, pulled up the tree, Frank's name, Noelle's name. Rachel Ellis, there, hanging like a rotten fruit from a low branch. She clicked Edit. A small pop-up appeared. Remove individual? This action cannot be undone. She clicked Yes. The site prompted her to give a reason. She typed 4 words, no longer family, by choice. Then she shut the laptop. That evening, she lit a fire in the backyard pit. Noelle brought marshmallows. Helen brought a bottle of red wine. They sat under string lights, laughter rising now and then like smoke. At one point, Noelle pulled out her phone and said, I never told you what Mom posted. Martha looked over. It was one of those cryptic quotes. You can build a palace with someone, but they'll still choose the shack if they feel in control. Helen snorted. That woman couldn't control a thermostat. Martha raised her glass. Let her keep her shack. They clinked. Later, when the fire was dying, Martha slipped away and stood alone by the garden fence. The wind was soft. Her house glowed behind her. Laughter flickered like candlelight through the windows. She looked at her hands. No bitterness, no tremble, just stillness and freedom. Martha sealed the envelope with careful hands. Inside, a letter on linen paper, her handwriting slow and steady. It wasn't legal or formal or dramatic, just real. It began with Noelle's name. Noelle, you are not just my granddaughter. You are the proof that all of this, every inch of hurt, every inch of healing, meant something. This house, this trust, this name, they're yours now. Use them not to survive, but to build. Love, always, Grandma. She folded it, tucked it into a smaller cedar box lined in the same green velvet as the one she'd once left on Sophia's doorstep. But this one, this box, was not for when someone realized what they'd lost. It was for someone who already knew what they'd gained. Noelle came every Sunday. Sometimes she brought groceries. Sometimes she brought nothing but herself. And Martha never needed anything more. They sat together on the porch, Noelle's laptop open beside them, filled with essays and applications and deadlines that made Martha's head spin. But Noelle carried them with ease now. As if being taken seriously had straightened her spine. Professor Riley said I should apply to clerk after graduation, Noelle said one afternoon, scrolling through internship listings. She said the way I write makes people sit up. You didn't get that from your mother, Martha said, sipping her tea. Noelle laughed. No, I got it from you. Meanwhile, online, where meaning goes to die, Rachel posted. Some relationships are so toxic, even DNA can't cleanse them. Choose peace, even if it means choosing distance. Mother-in-law drama, our healing journey. Some people want change. No comments, no likes. One spam bot replied with a link to essential oils. Martha didn't even need to see it. Helen screenshot it and texted it to her with the caption, "The desperate howl of a woman with no dinner invitations left." Martha replied with a single emoji. One morning, in the corner of the attic, Martha found her old journals, some half-finished. One, labeled in Robert's handwriting, "Start here." It was her memoir, well, the beginning of it. Scribbled paragraphs, childhood memories, fragments of lessons she once wanted to leave behind. She turned to the final page and uncapped her pen. I didn't raise my daughter-in-law. I raised my son. And he raised her. She stared at the sentence for a long time. Not bitter, just true. She closed the notebook, tied it with twine, and placed it in the safe beside the will. A legacy wasn't always about money. Sometimes it was just the decision to stop repeating the same grief twice. When the day finally came, bright, crisp, heavy with spring, Noelle stood at the podium in a blue and silver robe. Valedictorian, they said, and Martha almost didn't hear the rest. She was sitting in the front row of the university hall, olive coat folded neatly across her lap. Olivia was next to her, Helen behind her with a bouquet of white tulips. Noelle cleared her throat at the mic. There are two kinds of inheritance, she said. The kind you're given, and the kind you build yourself. She paused. My grandmother gave me both. Martha didn't cry, not quite, but her hands folded just a little tighter in her lap. And when Noelle's eyes found hers in the crowd, it felt like everything she'd fought for had finally found its place. That night, after everyone had gone, Martha sat alone by the fireplace. No emails, no phone calls, no threats in disguise. Just the fire, the house, the silence that no longer felt like punishment. She reached into the drawer behind the firewood and pulled out a small notebook. It was the one Noelle had left by accident during her last visit, half filled with ideas for a non-profit legal clinic. Martha ran her fingers along the page. Then she added one note of her own at the bottom. Make sure she remembers, her story didn't start with chaos. It started with a woman who finally said no. She closed the notebook, placed it gently in the cedar box, locked it. Outside, wind rustled the trees. Somewhere, maybe Sophia was still talking. But here, the legacy had already moved on. The apology post went live on a Monday morning. It was long, winding, half confession, half performance. Sophia, Rachel in legal matters, had uploaded a full paragraph to Facebook, written in the voice of someone desperately trying to sound healed. I've made mistakes. I've said things I regret. I hurt people I love. I'm trying every day to be better. Forgiveness isn't easy, but I hope someday I'll be seen for who I truly am, not just the pain I caused. Hashtag. Accountability à Hashtag sets family matters. Starting over. Noelle saw it before breakfast. She scrolled past it twice. Then on the third pass, tapped New Apar Asai and selected report, harassment, or bullying submit. Then she blocked her mother. Then she made eggs. She didn't tell Martha. Frank had started working again. Odd jobs, nothing stable. One of his cousins sent money once. A brother from out west offered to help with rent, just this once. Martha heard all this secondhand through Helen, who'd heard it from someone's sister-in-law's neighbor. None of it mattered. No strings, no guilt, no comeback. They were surviving, but without a door to knock on. The knock did come, though, soft, hesitant. One Thursday morning just before noon, Rachel stood at the threshold, makeup smudged under her eyes, fingers clenched around the handle of a small paper bag. Inside it, a lavender candle, a thinking of you card, and a half-eaten tin of lemon cookies Martha had once bought for herself from a specialty shop downtown. I just wanted to, Rachel started. Martha didn't say anything, didn't reach for the bag, didn't open the door more than the crack it already was. Rachel's eyes filled, but she said nothing else. After a moment, she turned and walked back down the steps. Martha closed the door, latched it, and returned to her tea. That weekend, Martha prepared for her birthday the way she preferred. Simply, no party, no spectacle. Just a quiet table set with linen napkins, peach preserves, and Helen's famous cherry scones. Noelle arrived early. She placed a single box in Martha's lap, a leather journal, hand-bound, with her initials pressed into the cover in gold. I thought maybe, Noelle said, it was time to write the rest. Martha ran her hand across the surface. Maybe it is. Later that afternoon, Noelle stood at the kitchen window, phone in hand, barely breathing. I got it, she said. Martha looked up. Columbia, Noelle whispered. Law school, full scholarship. Full. All 3 years. Martha didn't smile right away. She just closed her eyes for a moment, as if receiving the news like a blessing. Then she reached across the counter and took Noelle's hand. I didn't give your father this. I didn't give Rachel this. Noelle didn't speak. I didn't give them everything they needed to grow into who they could have been. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe I didn't know how. She squeezed her hand. But I gave you everything I had left. And you made it bloom. Noelle hugged her then, long, tight, wordless. That night, after the dishes were cleared and the candles had burned low, Martha walked to her cedar box. She opened the lid and added 2 new things. One, a printed screenshot of Noelle's scholarship email, folded in half and marked with a note, the beginning of her own legacy. And 2, a small card she'd found in the bottom of the paper bag Rachel had brought, one that hadn't been signed. It simply said, I'm sorry for what I ruined. Martha placed it under the stack of her own handwritten letters, not to preserve it, but to bury it. She sat by the window as the wind picked up outside, swirling dried camellia petals across the porch steps. She didn't light the candle. She didn't open the cookies. She just watched the leaves move, quietly, peacefully, like something being carried away. The campus lawn shimmered in the late afternoon sun, peppered with folding chairs, bouquets, and proud families holding cell phones aloft like trophies. Laughter floated between the hedges. Names echoed from the stage. And somewhere in the crowd, under a wide-brimmed hat and a pair of old tortoiseshell sunglasses, Martha smiled. Noelle had just crossed the stage. The announcer barely finished her last name before applause broke out in their corner. Olivia clapped sharply. Helen whistled. Even the dean raised an eyebrow when he handed over the certificate. Noelle's smile had that much weight behind it. Martha didn't clap right away. She just watched. watched her granddaughter, shoulders squared, robe dancing around her ankles, walk with the kind of grace no apology could forge, and no betrayal could break. The seat beside Martha sat empty. She hadn't saved it for anyone, but still the absence was noticeable. Rachel wasn't there. No surprise. Somewhere perhaps she was watching from a distance, or pretending not to, but today, in every way that mattered, she was gone, and Martha felt light. After the ceremony, Martha drifted toward the shade of an elm tree, away from the clamor of family selfies and congratulatory squeals. She needed a moment, just her and the breeze and the soft ache behind her eyes. Across the street, she caught sight of him. Frank, dressed plainly, no Sophia beside him. He stood near a parked car, hands in his pockets. He didn't move closer. Just lifted one hand in a quiet wave, not hopeful, not demanding, just there. Martha looked at him, then turned her head and walked away, her stride steady, her spine loose, her shoulders relaxed in a way they hadn't been in years. No flinch, no twist in her gut. Just done. Back at home, Martha found a text waiting on her phone. It was from Noelle, a photo first, her diploma, held proudly in front of a banner that read, Columbia Law School graduation, class of 2025. And then, I'm proud of you. Not thank you. Not I love you. Just, I'm proud of you. Martha sat down at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, teacup in the other. She read the message again and again. Then she placed the phone face down, folded her hands, and closed her eyes. There had been no final confrontation, no redemption arc, no grand reveal that changed everything. Just the truth. Just the line she'd drawn and kept. And this quiet recognition from the only person who ever really mattered in the end. She moved through the house slowly that evening, each room holding its own kind of memory, some bruised, some blooming. She touched the piano as she passed, straightened a photo frame, lit a single candle, not for ritual, not for grief. Just because she liked the way it made the room smell like bergamot and honey. She paused by the bookshelf and pulled out the leather journal Noelle had gifted her months ago, the one with her initials pressed into the cover in gold. She hadn't written much in it, just thoughts, a few dreams, one very short list labeled People I Owe Nothing. But tonight she turned to the back. A blank page waited. She wrote slowly, one final line. She slapped me in front of everyone. I made sure she'd never sit at my table again. Then she closed the book and set it beside the cedar box. The firelight flickered across the walls. Outside, a breeze rustled the hydrangeas, and somewhere in the distance, a new life was beginning to unfold, built not from pain, but from refusal, from boundaries, from peace,